Hello, welcome everybody to the Feed the Future Soybean Innovation Lab webinar series, Improving Mechanization for African Smallholder Farmers. Today is part one of a three-part webinar series that the Soybean Innovation Lab is hosting. We have three speakers today. Myself, I'm Carrie Clark with the Soybean Innovation Lab. We also have IITA, the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture. Peter Kolawole will be the main speaker. He's also joined by David Ojo and Termo Jallo, and they are in Nigeria. Our second speaker will be Alexandra Spieldock, who is with Compatible Technology International in Minnesota, and she possibly will be joined for the question and answer session by Alu Njai from Senegal. So the format that we're going to take today is that I'm going to give a short introduction, and then we'll go to Peter. All of the participants are muted, so if you guys have a question, you can type it into the question or into the chat section, preferably the question section. At the end of each presentation, we will go over the questions and give the speakers the chance to answer them. So let me start with the introduction. I thank you all for coming today. We're very pleased that so many people are interested in mechanization and working in mechanization for sub-Saharan Africa. So as most of us on this webinar know, agricultural innovation and mechanization in Africa lags behind other continents, but machinery is a key agriculture input and market enabler. So without machinery, sub-Saharan Africa is going to have problems increasing intensification and productivity in agriculture. Some of the constraints to mechanization in sub-Saharan Africa include affordability of the technology, availability, the ability of farmers to run the technology, private sector constraints, and gender issues. So there are positive cycles that can result from sustainable crop production that involve mechanization. As farm income increases and farmers can save more, it will increase the demand for mechanization. The mechanization will bring about higher productivity. In addition, the demand for mechanization will increase supply, which will lower the capital costs and lower the operating costs of mechanization. The problem then is, number one, the higher farm incomes. To get higher farm incomes, many things are going to happen in sub-Saharan Africa. There's going to have to be increased investment in rural development. There's going to have to be establishment of social protection systems, building of urban-rural linkages, enhanced land husbandry methods and agronomic improvements, and sustainable commercialization of farm products. So there's a lot riding on higher farm incomes to drive higher demand for mechanization. But without the mechanization, it's going to be hard to bring about the higher farm incomes. So the groups in this webinar series are trying to bring about change in a variety of ways, including recognizing the importance of mechanization in intensifying agricultural production. Many of the groups in our webinar series are developing new sources of farm machinery that are more suitable for African conditions. They're working on environmentally sustainable mechanization. In this series, we're starting with threshers, although there are many different types of mechanization that we could talk about. We're starting with threshers because there's also agronomic research that is going on in sub-Saharan Africa, where we are trying to move away in many places from plowing and tillage-heavy field preparation into more conservation agriculture. And as we work on the agronomy of that, then we also need to develop the mechanization that goes along with that. But threshers, most farmers can use right now. Threshers, however, eventually will need to address the issues of organic matter retention. As many of you know, right now, much crop residue is removed from the field, either to use as animal fodder or because it's just simply easier to beat thresh or stick thresh it away from the field. And that's something that we as thresher researchers have to address, how to get farmers to leave the organic matter in the field. Some of the groups in this webinar series are also trying to develop sustainable business models and include gender equity in the programs that they develop. We're all working on public-private partnerships and building in-country capacity. In addition to the organized efforts at mechanization represented at this webinar series, there are also efforts at other NGOs, governmental workshops, and academic institutions across sub-Saharan Africa. Getting designs and prototypes into the hands of users seems to be the major problem. largely due to low farm income and lack of available financing. The photos show several places that exist in Ghana, including the Kwame Nkrumah Institute of Science and Technology, where mechanization research is occurring, the Gratis Foundation throughout Ghana, where equipment is available not only for production capacity at the Gratis, but also in support of local blacksmiths, and then places like the Tamale Implement Factory in Tamale, Ghana. But there's also a large collective of local artisans and welders who are working in agricultural mechanization. These guys are not people who I'm going to be able to easily find to put on a webinar series, but hopefully that you as groups who are working in mechanization find these people in your areas and work with them. Most of their production is done on commission and done on a small order basis, and most of their designs are reverse engineered from locally available imports, and availability of materials can be seriously limiting. You can see the thresher in the top right, the orange one. That's what happens when you don't have raw metal available. That guy put that together with every little piece of scrap metal he could find in his village. However, one of the problems that some of these guys have is that sometimes a copy design is missing an integral design factor that makes the thresher work really well. So there are 3 webinars planned in the series so far. Today's, as I said, is IITA and CTI. In a month, June 6th, we'll have the Malawi oilseed sector transformation and Soybean Innovation Lab. We'll talk about their programs. So the MOST program is working on a small thresher with groundnut soybean in the sunflower market, and the Soybean Innovation Lab has been working in Ghana, focusing on training local artisans, building collaborations with universities and government workshops to scale up design, testing, and production, and also developing programs that address access to mechanization by female farmers. And the third series, we'll hear from Imara, the third webinar, we'll hear from Imara Tech, which is a startup operating in Tanzania that has a multi-crop thresher as their first product. And they're working on a model where they're focusing on entrepreneurial villagers who will operate the thresher as a service business. And then finally, we'll hear from Purdue University, who has developed a multi-crop thresher for use in sub-Saharan Africa, and they've also been doing fabrication training in West Africa. So with that, we are going to start with Peter and the group at IITA.
Okay, thank you. We're looking at improving, I'm Peter Kolola, and you know my team, all my team members already have their name introduced at the beginning of this program. We have Professor Ujo and Engineer Diallo, very close, and these are good designers and a breeder, so you have been breeder, and a very good West African engineer. Thank you, sir. So, I mean, we are talking about improving mechanization for African smallholder farmers. We will be looking at the overview of IITA mechanization program. And what we are looking at here, we have the structures to guide us through the introduction, goal of IITA mechanization, IITA Threshers, and then conclusion. We're looking at transforming agriculture. Mechanization is one of the pillars under appropriate conditions. Asia succeeded in our own area with the agricultural mechanization because they have the industry very close. So industrialization and mechanization happens to be the pillars required for the Asian agricultural transformation. But what happened in case of African scenario? In the African scenario, smallholder farmers suffer greatly because we are thinking of only processing. And in processing, what do we have to use? Even right from the beginning, from planting, smallholder farmers rely only on hoe and cutlasses. And this cannot help in commercial agriculture. But in case of threshing, Over 80% of our harvested grain are threshed manually. The traditional method of threshing soybean, for instance, requires a lot of manual labor, a lot of man hours, around 150 to 230 man hour per hectare. That is huge. So what do? We have to think of mechanization. And in our model of mechanization, we are looking at involving the private sectors so that the private sector can adapt required technology. We require machinery. Yes, some of the machinery can be manufactured locally, but the prime movers is still far away from African ability. So we still require some machinery importers that will bring in small machines for the private sectors or whoever is interested to purchase. Then we need a small scale workshop and workshop technicians or fabricators that can multiply these farm tools and machines. Our aim is to have a commercial farming. That is scaling and delivery. The goal of our IITA mechanization. IITA have a market development that is supporting the participation of private sector to promote technologies, including rural service providers, test and promoting the best technology for mechanization in collaboration with the National Agricultural Research Centers. We also think of knowledge, that is, improve the access to adapt technology, tools, and expert support system. We are equally looking at advocacy and institutional development, that is, contributing to the implementation of conducive environment and the capacity of the stakeholders, promoting the technology transfer right from this research to extension system. We are thinking about the partnership, promoting the partnership, including South-South collaboration. Our main work stream goes into creating demands through value chain projects, linking mechanization and other input in business model to output business model in value chains to promote outreach and delivery. In IITA, we are focusing on edible. This has to do with the youth. And TAT, which is for the adult, that is transformation of African agricultural technology. We are looking at improving capacity through demonstration services and training, then technology transfer. We equally tailor these technologies by identifying and testing. And where we find it very good, we adapt the use for our mandate crops. We contribute to policy framework supporting the implementation of policies in sub-Saharan Africa. And this includes the research, extension, education, farmers, private sector, and institutional development. Partnership development. We engage with National Agricultural Research Center, influencing champions across partners, including government, private sector, NGO. We are particularly interested in youth and the women group and farmer organization. In this case, we have pre-harvest machinery. IITA mechanization encourages smallholder farmers to use machines for crop production, at least in the areas where small farmers can use machines, especially in planting, in weeding, in harvesting, and in transportation. Some of the machines you see around, especially those ones with small equipment, engine on top of them, internal combustion engine, were locally fabricated by the youth in IITA. And currently we are multiplying this. And if we succeed, it means this can go across Africa. Very good machine for weeding, as you can see the other picture at the left-hand side. So we adequately train our friends. We improve their skill, especially in fabrication. In machine utilization, the engineer is here, does a lot of that for us across Africa. Maintenance and spare parts supply lines, as well as stocking those spares by private sector, so that we have access to them easily and farmers need not to worry where to buy these spares. So, adequate, where are we? We're working with the youth. IITA Mechanization work with the youth in the area of design and fabrication of machines. We encourage them to render affordable, timely, and effective mechanized services. We will be handling our threshing machine, and this threshing machine, known as IITA Thresher, designed by a post-harvest engineering unit in the 1990s for rural women. And that program was sponsored and then funded by Ford Foundation. And this machine is everywhere in Africa. Apart from what we have done in the field of cassava processing, which is known across Africa. The soybean thresher operates on very good conditions. We have the speed of the prime mover as a factor, the airflow rates, the soybean moisture. They are valuable here. That is the moisture content of the soybean. So we consider that, and you can see in the picture how we handle, because this machine is actually designed to carry out so many other threshing jobs, more especially maize, rice, cowpea. But the picture at the background is purely that of soybean and the service provision. So IITA encouraged the fabrication of these threshers by private workshops. The Nigerian National Center of Agricultural Mechanization, INCAM, is collaborating in this area. Presently, they fabricated a lot of this machine and they are sending or selling it across Africa. Commercialization. As you are aware, IITA is not a profit-making organization, but facilitates the production of this machine by partners for profit across Africa. So our business development model, we allow people to own this machine. We allow people to fabricate this machine. We can fabricate this machine for a group of people and they use it for service provision. The spare parts is a percent of its own. The fast moving items like the belts, the bearing, pulley, all these are affordable and available. So many other, you can see a service provider on the donkey in one of the northern parts of this country conveying the treasure to a given field. And the youth at the top using the same machine to carry out service provision by threshing maize for required people. The conclusion will be, IITA, we have this machine, we have the drawings, we are ready to partner with anybody, we are ready to partner with any organization. Freely, we are prepared to teach people how to fabricate this machine. We are equally ready to send our drawings to organizations that we need them. I must tell you that our machine performs very well and excellently, very well under the conditions of the crops that they were designed for. IITA Mechanization encourage the promotion of this machine as an appropriate farm tool that can lead to the removal of drudgery and improve the well-being of African farmers. And don't forget, we're working very hard to replace hoe and cutlasses in Africa by adopting and scaling appropriate technology for farmers' consideration. Wherever this technology exists, please let us know. We'll be waiting. And one thing I don't want us to forget is that IITA is 50 years old. We are in celebration mode. And you join me in congratulating our DG, Dr. Saginga, and all other DGs working closely with him. We are very happy staff, and we are very happy working with him as our leader and with all the IITA family all over the world. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you very much, Peter. I'm not sure, Courtney is kind of monitoring the questions, but I'd like to start out with a question for you. So on your multi-crop thresher, you said it would do maize, rice, cowpeas, soybeans. Are there adjustments you have to make to the thresher to do both maize and those other types of crops? Is there adjustments like to the threshing cylinder or to the concave or something?
Yeah. For now, we use it as it is. But Engineer Dalo is one of our design engineers. It will tell, but we don't want a kind of manipulation that the women or the youth will be suffering on. But the engine speed is a real factor. But Engineer Dalo, please.
Yeah. We use it as it is. The only adjustment we put is in the screen. The screen is unmovable. And as said Dr. Kolawole, is the speed of the engine, the moisture content, or the dryness of the crop we want to thresh, and especially in the screen. Our thresher is made in such a way that you can just remove without bolting or adjusting anything. Put one screen, replacing another one. This is the only adjustment we do in it, and it is a multi-crop. It does all the crops that have been listed without crushing the grains.
Okay, so if you're using it for maize, does the cob shoot out the same exit chute as the rest of the chaff?
Yes, the shaft goes to the same area, and the grain comes down the same route.
Okay. Have you guys had any issues with grain coming out the chaff exit chutes?
No, we have not had it. But if the crop you are threshing, they are not very much dry. Some grain will follow the trash when they are going out. But we have not had those cases in our place. Also, the mouth where the trash comes out,
the chutes,
where the shaft comes out, you make some kind of cloth screen to filter in case any grain coming out. But basically, we don't have the grain flying away. They all come down.
Okay. And also, when you guys work with other organizations and the service providers on the threshers, is there anything you do in particular to help women get access to the threshers? It's one of the things we've worried about is if we have a multi-crop thresher that can do maize, that it might get taken over by the male members of the community and be less accessible to women who might not be growing maize.
Okay. Professor Joe, will you pick that up?
There's no major competition between gender. One thing is, here, particularly in Nigeria, even though men have the priority, but in as much as anytime any woman has something to do, she is always given her own rightful place, and there's no competition, there's no cheating. I think there's no much problem concerning gender here, because what a man does in Nigeria, particularly, or women do the same thing. So it's a matter of adjusting time for each operation.
And also one thing, this is not free services. You come with your crop according to the layout conditions there, whether you are paying in nature or you are paying in money. You bring your crop, they thresh for you, and they go. And you take your crop, you go with it. So there is no really, as you mentioned, there is no issue of gender being discriminated. No, there's not something like that. It's only when you cannot pay, then you may face problem in getting your crop threshed, or when you don't follow the laid down rules. Maybe it's a cooperative or an association. You must pay your dues, and you are not being paid. In that case, they discriminate you out. But if you are paying, you get your rights.
Yes, thank you. I think Alima is in the house, one of our present co-author. Just come bring in your chair so that you answer this question. You have been the chief service provider. Stay so that you can be seen. Yes. Now, what is your answer to this question?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I'm a service provider, and so far we've been rendering services. I'm leading a group of agripreneurs, youth agripreneurs in mechanizing. We are service provider, so I've been leading them and I partake in the activities on the field. So I don't say anything like gender discrimination. The people at their mindset change. Once their mindset is changed and they could see the business part of it, I don't say anything like gender, maybe male and female, and we just need to encourage females out there to partake in this. It's not something stressful, it's all about having the passion for the right thing to do, then the business aspect of it. Thank you.
Great. Kiri, we have some more questions from the attendees. Is it okay if I address one? Okay. So we have a question from Pascal Nikiki Bahizi from the Clinton Foundation in Rwanda. Pascal asks about what are the prices of the threshing machines, and how can organizations try these machines in Rwanda / the Eastern Province?
They did that particular machine in Rwanda, if I understand your question.
Right, and also the price of the machine.
The price of the machine, what does it cost in dollar now? It used to be around $1,000 to $2,000, right?
Yeah, around $2,000.
Okay.
The machine around $2,000.
Okay. And is there any availability of these machines for smallholder farmer organizations in Rwanda or East Africa?
If we get the request, we will make it available to them.
Okay. Thank you. We have another question from Harry Ngoma with USAID in Zambia. So Harry was also interested in how engaged are the private sector in supplying these threshers to potential users?
Yeah. In IITA, as Dr. Kolawole mentioned, these threshers were developed here, localized completely in the 90s. We have trained a lot of fabricators, Nigerian local fabricators, to make these machines and to make spare parts for them. So basically, they are the one now making those machines and selling. We are just backstopping them.
Okay.
We have the drawings we can share with organizations that are interested, and we have the ability to train the fabricators if they come to IITA or any IITA outlet within Africa. We have our hubs around Africa, so where we can actually execute our mandate and be able to actually have an impact on this mechanization across Africa.
Then, sorry, in addition to that, I have something to add to that. We are service provider and we are also into sales and after sales services of machinery. So, request in the past. So, if you are interested in any of the machine, you can place your request across to us because we are for business. We are IITA is non-profit organization, but we are business inclined. We are agripreneur. So, if you have any request, you can just send your request to us. We'll work on that and get the machine for you.
Don't be confused with our agripreneur. There are youths that dedicated themselves to the provision of services and being paid for it. And we have a lot of them in this room for now at the other end of the screen. So IITA encouraged the youth and they built up a group of youth, change their mindset, and they find that farming is cool. And they are making a lot of money from rendering services. And this is mechanization aspect of the IITA youth agripreneur. And I think they were having some of them across Africa, like in Tanzania,
Tanzania,
Congo,
Kenya,
Congo,
all IITA hubs, virtually all IITA hubs in Africa.
So you can actually contact us. We produce it for them. We don't make profit, but they can do the sale. But if it's difficult to send some of this machine across, we are prepared to come over, train the fabricators at the other end, so that from there we will empower them. They have the skill. They continue to produce this machine and continue to sell and make money. And then before we know it, probably we'll be mechanizing small scale, just like what I said. We'll move away from use of crops and whatever to threshing our crops. Thank you.
Thank you. Carrie, do you want to take any more questions, or do we need to continue moving?
Let's take a few more questions. Just maybe if they could answer real quick. Some people want to know what the capacity of the thresher is, and does the price include the engine?
Yes, the price includes the engine. The capacity depends upon the crops inside the threshing things, the dryness of the product, etc. But we put it around, for some crops, 1 ton per hour. For some crops, around half a ton or 200 kilograms per hour. But that means you produce at least 200 kilograms per hour to 1 ton, according to the crop you are threshing.
In Ethiopia evaluated IITA thresher as at that time. They give it 240 kilograms per hour for maize. And Professor Joe recently made proper use as a soybean scientist. Probably you have a...
We have been able to make it about 800 kilograms per hour. That is 0.8 tons per hour. I mean, per day. Per 8 hours. Per 8 hour day. And if there is no breakdown, in fact, there was a time we were able to make it 1 ton per day. It was very effective.
Okay, some other questions are, do you all charge when you train people? Like if you go to another country outside of Nigeria and train somebody? And also, how do you guarantee that your specs are, what's the quality control? How do you know that further down the line they're assembling it correctly? And yeah, go ahead and answer those questions.
Yes, if we have to go to another country, of course, transportation or some other, but then we have a capacity development office that make all arrangement to all that. I don't have much of the idea what that one will cost. But as for our spec, we made every requirement into as we were presented. This machine was developed 1990, and you can imagine where I was at that age. Now we have the angle of repose, the density, so many other parameters were put into consideration, and which we also still have the drawing as they are, and so many improvements took place along the line before it gets to our own level. In fact, it's a machine that I cherish so much, and I think I can vouch for this machine as an engineer at any time of the day.
Okay, one other question, and this will be the final question, is to accelerate adoption, is there a financing mechanism for smallholder farmers? And if so, what is the return on investment?
Well, return on investment, in terms of money?
Yes, sure.
Well, since I will allow the agripreneur to pick up that, because he has been doing a little bit of the work. Yes, over to you.
All right. Yeah, thank you. The return on investment, it depends on the area you have, how the willingness of the farmers over there to adopt the technology. For instance, now, like they said from their data, you can comfortably thresh 1 ton. There was the time we threshed like 2 tons per day during our services. So I believe it depends on how frequent they patronize you that you will determine how you generate your income. So it's a function of your clients.
Yeah. Before the prof says something, I want to add one thing. As we told you, this machine is multi-crop thresher. So it does a number of crops. That means you finish one crop, you go to another, So you are increasing the usefulness of the flexibility of the use of the machine. So you are increasing your source of income. It's very important, because if a machine just works for 1 season and then you wait for next season too, then you have problem in the return on investment. The other thing, the machine is made very sturdy, very strong. So you can use it, except for the belt and other things. You can use it for 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. You put it into the return of investment and the fact that you have at least 4 to 5 different crops that you can thresh. You can imagine what it is. That's only on the engineering aspect I want to say. When we were building the machine, what we took into consideration. But the other aspect of the finance, maybe Prof has to put 1 or 2.
I want to believe that as far as my own crop is concerned, soybean, threshing is a very critical aspect of soybean, and using this machine, I've been very much convinced that if a group of farmers can have the machine and fully utilize the way it is designed for, the return on investment is going to be very great. Because, for example, if I want to borrow the machine for 1 week, and maybe at a cost of $1,000, and during the week I'm able to do a lot of threshing from which I can make as much as $4,000. Then that is something. It means that I'm fully utilizing the opportunity and I'm making my own money without any stress. So the machine is beautiful. It is highly cost effective, and I believe that can go a long way in Africa.
Yeah. What?
In line with that, this is a rice thresher, it's a maize thresher, it's a soybean thresher, it's cow. So there's no dull moment. So, and the season of these crops may not be at the same time, and it's difficult for me to tell you this is the amount of profit made, because people don't disclose that as such in Africa. And I know some of my clients smiles to the bank. So when they smile to the bank, you know what it means. So thank you very much.
And adding to this one, we are talking about this profitability. We are ready to partner with any organization that is ready to come to us. We mount up a project and then we carry these financial considerations, including any other adaptation that may be needed. What we have is a machine we have on the ground. We know it is working for many crops. We are ready to collaborate with anybody on any aspect to make sure that this machine is made as perfect as possible and in the hand of as many African smallholder farmer possible.
Okay, you guys, we're going to need to move on. I want to thank you guys. There's a couple different things we could do. There are some more questions. So after CTI has presented and answered their questions, people who continue to have questions can stay on the webinar. We can also help you guys with an exchange of emails to facilitate follow-up of questions from there too. Now, there was another question that I want you guys in Nigeria to think about, and then Andrea will also think about it, and that is, in your experience, so we're not going to answer this now, we'll answer it after Andrea talks, but in your experience, what are the main social constraints that keep that technology from being adopted, and how has your group addressed this issue? Okay, so give that some thought, and now we're going to switch over to Andrea Spildock from CTI.
Just want to say good morning, and I want to thank you, Missouri, and Carrie and Courtney, and also Peter and the team from IITA. It's really an exciting topic. It's the work that we are thinking about every day, and I'm just honored to be able to share a bit of our learnings. And just recently, I was in Kenya for the first All-Africa Post-Harvest Congress and Exhibition, and there were all types of innovations being shown, and so many of the partners that you're showcasing in this webinar series also there, and I just see that it's an exciting time. And at that conference, you know, again, 600 people from around the continent, and a lot of the same kinds of questions were coming up. And one of the things that was mentioned was that you know, in terms of, and in fact by one of the representatives of the Africa Development Bank, that, you know, for the various challenges that Africa is facing, in particular in the agricultural sector, that we've got to really focus on what is a new term, post-harvestication, as a key strategy for really targeting smallholders and thinking about where the gaps are in the work that we've been doing. So so with that, I'll get started. I just want to also say thank you to my country director, Aliou Njai, who's also on this webinar from Senegal, who's spearheading so much of the work, and he's here with ANCAR, which is the National Extension Agency, through the Senegalese government. And again, as Peter was saying, these partnerships are so critical for any of the kinds of advancement that we would seek to have. So my cover picture is indeed of Aliou Njai. If you want to know what he looks like, that's him, and one of the women farmers that we are showcasing in our project there. So very briefly, Compatible Technology International is, we're actually a nonprofit. We're based in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is an agricultural state in the upper Midwest of the United States, and a state with many different food companies and experience in working in the global food market for different types of tools, but also various food products, etc. And we have an interesting history. We were founded by a food scientist that came out of General Mills, and we have over the years worked with various volunteer experts and continue to do so from the food companies, whether it is General Mills or Cargill or the Buehler Group, which is the largest food technology company in the world, also with operations in Africa. And we feel that that is, from the get-go, a very strong you know, offering that we bring in terms of looking at public and private partnerships and these kinds of larger potential models for scaling. We have our headquarters and design, so to speak. We have a workshop here in Minnesota, but we also work with engineers and technical experts in the countries where we operate, and we feel that decentralizing design and having that north-south collaboration and genuine sharing of expertise is also quite important. And because we focus on, we have from the very beginning focused on post-harvest technology solutions for smallholder farmers throughout the world, we know that because women do most of that work, that there's a real opportunity to alleviate their drudgery. And of course, as Peter mentioned, we can look at how we can bring youth into the equation in terms of creating employment and new opportunities that haven't existed, so that people stay in the rural sector and find that it's actually worthwhile. One of the things I just wanted to share is that for many, many years, we're in our 35th year, but in some ways we're like a startup, because we focused so much of our earlier research. Our first research was on potato processing in India, maize storage in Guatemala, various types of processing and post-harvest initiatives, but most of them very small scale, more R&D, where we would send in our volunteers and our team into country for a few weeks at a time, work with partners, share our designs. We tried sharing our designs from our headquarters with manufacturers and other partners, and found that actually that didn't work as much as we thought it would. And so I think it's worth discussing in terms of the models that we're developing, because ultimately there's a challenge in terms of how do you create demand, and the pull factor needs to come from the farmers, and the pull factor needs to come from the private sector in terms of the demand for the tools in the first place. Otherwise, manufacturers are not going to jump to fabricate the tools. At least in our experience, that hasn't been the case. So we shifted our approach in terms of looking at technologies, yes, at the center of what we do, but programs, post-harvest programs, whereby we are designing the tools, we are introducing the tools, thinking about the best way to do that, ensuring that training always accompanies the tools, training for farmers, but also training, as was mentioned, for repair and maintenance and with the fabrication experts that we work with. And then also product development for sale in the local market, but also for bulk sale to buyers. So one of the things that I'm so proud about CTI, and I think that all of us are thinking about, is, it's one thing to focus on the technology, and many years of working on technology R&D. I think that engineers focus so much on the technology and on the function of the technology that didn't actually do the upfront research on the market. What does the market need? What would be the potential for growth in the market, for the technology, and again, the output? The other thing is, we often focus on these large-scale interventions, these expensive interventions for innovation, and if we're talking smallholder farmers with 1 to 5 hectares of land, and if we're talking about women farmers and alleviating their drudgery and recognizing that they in most cases don't own the land they're working on, and I would argue there are gender differences to be explored, then we do need to get in there and understand the farmer needs. And there needs to be a collaborative design process, and we often refer to the farmers that we're working with as co-designers, because we go in and we really try to talk with them up front. The other learnings we have is, although we have a hybrid approach at CTI, we do have global supply of materials coming from China, for example, to support our fabrication efforts in Senegal, at least. We really want to invest in the African private sector, African manufacturing and distribution, and that supply chain on the continent. And I think that's where a lot of work really does need to be done in terms of increasing the capacity, but also ensuring quality and post-sales support and technical assistance. Because again, we don't want to give away the technologies. Our philosophy is farmers do need some skin in the game if it's going to be viable, and that the real fun, so to speak, and the real potential is in figuring out these business models and the appropriate price point and the return on investment and all of that. And I don't say we have all the answers, but that's where we are really focusing our efforts. And so moving into the next, why is my slide not working? Just not to spend too much time on this slide, but we do, again, our learnings show us that we do need to have a comprehensive understanding of where the different parts of our work are. And so we know that smallholders are at the center, and we've identified the customer segments, so to speak, in terms of what the market segments look like, but also now looking at where are the buyers, the mid-level food processors for bulk sale, and the seed companies for better quality seeds, as well as the potential for packaging, labeling products, feeding some of these schools and the hospitals and the universities with nutritious foods, with smallholder crops, really becoming suppliers in their own right. And then, of course, figuring out all this other work around licensing and, you know, fabrication, sales, technical training, all of those things. They do need to be looked at and to get together at the same time that we know that we're always partnering for the work that we do. And by partnering, I do mean that we're working with you know, all these different sectors, as Peter also mentioned. So again, developing affordable tools for training, looking at the commercialization component as a key strategy with local supply chains, and the opportunity to develop new models that really strengthen the, not only alleviate drudgery, but also strengthen the business leadership, the capacity building, and the benefit of women and youth in the rural sector, and level that playing field. And I want to just quickly go over 2 programs that we have in Senegal, where we have a millet threshing unit, and in Malawi we've been working with groundnuts. I'm sorry, I don't know why my... Okay, so in Senegal, I don't think I need to tell the group in this webinar the importance of pro-millet, certainly not IITA. But I mean, we focus on millet because it's a drought-resistant crop, it's a nutritious crop. We know there's an emerging urban market, particularly in Senegal. There's a national campaign to support various crops like millet and sorghum, smallholder crops. And there's also a national campaign to move women away from mortar and pestle, reducing their drudgery in a major way, from having to get up at 5 in the morning to get started with the day, not only processing millet, but all the other things, collecting water, preparing food for their families, cleaning up, taking care of the children, etc. So again, thinking about that bigger potential there, and the enabling policy environment that it would allow us to move more freely, and also to think about regional growth, because we know that, of course, the entire Western Sahel represents an opportunity for market growth. Now, you know the traditional way that women are threshing with a mortar and pestle and the kind of work that goes into it. You also know that through winnowing, there's a lot of dirt that gets mixed in with the grain, as well as food loss. And so we were trying to address quality of food as well as how do we save food at this critical time. And we looked at the kind of technology, again, that would address multiple things. In this case, we call it a thresher, but it strips, it threshes, and it winnows millet. And it's a hand-operated machine. We start with that where communities that we work are remote communities that don't have electricity and a lot of financial capital. By starting with hand-operated portable mechanization, could we therefore help farmers to get a leg up and eventually motorize as a strategy. We developed a threshing component, a millet processing unit that is 5 times faster than traditional methods. It's whole, clean grain, so it's not cracked, which also improves the quality and reduces the potential for rancidity and loss. And we see there's an 8% reduction in losses. And by the way, we received some, initial financial capital from a very small amount, but nonetheless very helpful to us, support from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, USAID Feed the Future, and we're now moving forward for 4 more years of developing the value chain around the technology. We developed farmer return on investment models with 1 to 2 year payback, looking at 4-month seasonal payback, 8-month seasonal payback, and we see absolute revenue for the farmers, and looking at loans at around 14% interest. And we've again put together these models that include revenue coming in, the labor that costs, the gross profit, the loan payment, as well as the net payment to farmers. And we feel that, again, this is part of what our due diligence is in terms of the adoption really being going forward and being the potential for scaling, and also looking for that threshing service model, as IITA mentioned and other groups are looking at. And I'd like to say this works for millet. Preliminary research shows that it also works for sorghum and rice, so we have more research to do on that, but goal being multiple crop testing. and value. So here's an example of the technology. You can see it's on wheels. This is a community that we brought it to, I believe, in Marloj. You can see that Ankara is listed as one of our partners. You can also see FINRA through support from WAP and the World Bank for developing the technologies and optimizing them. Our local manufacturer, Pen and Fils, very important for our work, and we work with them daily. And we get out there in the communities. We're in 150 communities right now with this particular thresher, doing the extension and the training and meeting with the chiefs of the village and trying to understand what adoption barriers might look like, because we know it's a process. It is not just a drop-off. They really need to know that we are there with them along the way. And of course, Mamed Jabout is one of the national food processing companies that's already working with USAID and the World Food Program and others to supply the national market in Senegal, and has a commitment to support smallholder farmers along the way. And these partnerships just leverage the the potential in such an important and leverage the potential in a real way. And I also just want to show you some wonderful pictures where we see that, the fun of this is also getting in there and training the farmers. And here's, of course, a woman in a very beautiful dress, of course, for a photo op. But, here she is, and she's oiling the chains. We don't want farmers to feel afraid of the technology. We want them to be able to troubleshoot and know what's needed to do. So here she is also with a wrench. Our tools come with training. They come with additional tools and replacement parts as needed. And always along the way, post-sales, customer support, we think is really critical. It's an area of growth for CTI. And I think you can't ignore it. I mean, in our case, if these things don't work, the farmers are just going to throw them into a field somewhere. They're never going to use them again, and you lose all the political capital. So it's very important that they feel that they're getting a quality product and quality service. Here's an example of the partnership. Again, you see Ali and Jai, and you see our partners at Pen and Fils and Ties, figuring out some of the, how do we improve the screen and how do we get the flywheel going, et cetera, et cetera. How do we make sure the product, our tool, is safe, it's food safe, it's person safe, et cetera. And the promotion. We think there's a huge opportunity to target directly to farmers. Get their story in. Look at materials that include the clothes that they wear, the language that they're using, in this case French as the national language in Senegal. But of course trainings happen in Wolof, demonstrations through agricultural fairs, and what kinds of fun can we have with promotion that will really improve our market model. And of course product development. This is another area of growth where we see our private sector partners who have experience in food science, nutrition, packaging, labeling, all of these things. This is the next step for our farmers to feel like the tool actually contributes to something larger. Now this is sale of peanut paste through another tool that we have for our grinder in the market, but we also can sell millet flour and whole grain. But then now you see at the next level through Mamed Jabout the packaging that's being done with the millet that we can supply to them. And they indeed are working in the national market. They do have products. And this is Pierre Njai, who is the CEO of Mamed Jabout. So we're in that commercialization phase. You see that it still includes a rooster in the picture. And this is hard and messy work, and there's no magic bullet, but it is about linking customers with market buyers and looking at, of course, the potential for regional growth. Now I'm very quickly going to just say something about Malawi, because there we also partner with NARS. We've partnered with ICRISAT as a specialist, of course, one of the research institutions, the National Association of Small Farmers, as well as a local manufacturer, C2C. And we, over time, developed a research project looking at smallholder constraints for various aspects of post-harvest activities. I'm just going to mention shelling today, but the idea being that not only could we alleviate drudgery with the technologies, but we could also mitigate aflatoxin, which we know is a huge barrier for smallholder market growth. And, of course, it's a major concern around for when it comes to health and nutrition and child stunting. So the multiple reverberating impact is quite important when you think about what is a tool. It is a catalyst for these larger things. You know the traditional way that women are hand shelling, at least in Malawi and in Tanzania, they are hand shelling and they wet the shells to make it easier to get the nuts out of the shell. And so the research that we did was looking at how you could, dry shelling could not only, take away that step of wetting the shells, but obviously when you moisten the shells, you increase potential for mold and aflatoxin, so dry shelling as a mitigating factor for aflatoxin. And what we came up with was, again, another tool. You'll see our colors are blue. But, tools where they're hand operated, maybe on the back, screens that can be multiple screens for different types of shells, whole nuts, looking at Chalimbana and CG7 as primary nuts, but others as well. Again, less contamination, less drudgery, and now the farmer is able to produce more because of the time that it takes. However, I will say this issue on who now manages the technology and how do you develop the ROI model that also supports women where they've traditionally been left out of the market is a real issue, and we're looking through that, and you can see we also have support from the McKnight Foundation. So this groundnut sheller is 18 times faster, and again, it's the components, the value proposition that I mentioned. We're piloting it in districts throughout Malawi. The woman here is our country representative, Wupe Mwakasungula. Here she's doing demonstrations. And again, we're in that process of promotion, consumer demand, figuring out from the farmers what their actual revenue is, their gain, so that we have a bigger proof of concept and story around it, and that we can go into Tanzania next year. And we've also brought them into Zambia for preliminary demonstration and received a lot of positive response, as well as models where you can get the technology into a unit, so to speak, of building and get the training and product development to go along with that. And as Peter mentioned from IITA, multiple crop versus single crop threshing or single crop technologies, as a way forward. So, I just want to say, in terms of the work that would involve scaling, in my mind, at least in the case of CTI, we just feel that it's not just a technology. We've got to invest in the like a business does. If we're seriously trying to think about private sector and private sector approaches, they invest in the capital, the upfront capital, to do that initial R&D, consumer research, promotion, basic post-sale support and quality assurance, etc. These aren't just handoffs. They are part of the required money to do this, and I think that this is where we can be absolutely transformative in our work, and in particular we can really make a big difference when it comes to technologies or appropriate technologies that strengthen women's empowerment, as well as revitalize the rural sector for the youth to take interest and to re-engage. So thank you so much. The last slide is about scaling, and I think I've made that point enough, but you can see that the potential is there, at least in the two countries where we are, and our interest would be to grow, and for that growth it would need the capital to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. We have several questions that have come in. The first is going to be, what is the cost of the millet thresher and the peanut thresher?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
So our target price for the thresher is $400, and the current cost of the sheller that I mentioned in Malawi, where we actually have manufacturing capacity at the moment, is it's $250.
Okay, we have a couple questions.
And on that point, I would just like to say we try to target price points that are $500 or less, because we know that the challenge that brings. And I will also say we keep trying to kind of think about in a deeper way how to really understand the full price the full price component around the tool. So it's not just the cost of production, but also the incentive and the kickback to the manufacturer as well.
Okay. We have a couple questions that have come in from Harry Ngoma, who is the mission director at USAID Zambia. He would like to know, who is CTI working with in Zambia, and what is the break percentage with the groundnut sheller?
Sure. So thank you, Henry. We're not currently working with anybody in Zambia. We have been working with ICRASAT in Malawi, and ICRASAT initially brought some of our prototypes over the border into Zambia as part of its work with USAID support, I believe. And there was a lot of interest in the prototypes. In October, I was in Zambia as well with we have a lifter, and we have a stripper, and we have a dry sheller, and we brought it to Chipata, and we shared it with some of the Ministry of Ag folks there, as well as what had been, I believe, a USAID supported project that ACDI VOCA was working on to strengthen value chains, and the farmers were absolutely excited. We're ready to move into Zambia, but we don't currently have a person there. And so again, the key for us is to get the financial support to grow our regional presence. And the breakage on the sheller depends on the moisture level of the nuts. So I could follow up with you separately on that, but the latest research that I have found on that sheller is if it's at the proper moisture level, which I think is about 9%, it's between 2 to 4% breakage. So it's very low.
Okay, now I'd like first for Alexandra to answer the question that was posed earlier. In your experience, what are the main social constraints that keep the technology from being adopted, and how has your group addressed this issue?
Okay, I mean, I mentioned a little bit in the beginning. I believe that one of the constraints that we've experienced, I'll just speak for us, is that we focused on R&D for a very long time, and we didn't focus on the distribution and adoption uptake piece of things. And I don't think the issue is in the innovation itself. I think that there are many different types of innovation, and in our case, of course, they're simple innovations, but of course they are very, there is an important engineering component to them. They are designed in a particular way. The key is in getting that consumer demand, getting into the field, working with farmers, really understanding their needs, but also developing those relationships with the private sector. And that's where CTI is focused in this phase of its organizational growth, is being that facilitator, to really build that ecosystem of private sector actors and partners, NGOs, government as well, that can really help to build that so-called uptake and proof of impact. So I think that there's so much learning to be done there, and there has so far I have not seen a lot of attention going to the African private sector for manufacturing and distribution of post-harvest technology. So this is an area that we are looking at. I will say capacity is an issue, and we've already seen this where some materials cannot be found as readily in Africa or at the quality, and they slow down the production, or they slow down the potential for scaling in a bigger way. So CTI is really looking at this with trying to develop our own sort of logistics strategy that, where as the private sector does with other products, where we need to source from other places, we do so. If we can do it on the African continent, that's our philosophy and our commitment. At the very least, making sure that as much fabrication can be happening locally and final assembly, locally, because that is that can also be a barrier for getting tools available and accessible and affordable, as you framed in the beginning of the webinar. So we're working through that. And lastly, I do think the gender piece, our experience is, and Ali, you can say something about this too, but we just went into a village, and Ankara as well, where we found out that one of the technologies that we deployed there, and we did some initial training and a lot of positive feedback. A chief of village had kind of taken the technology, and it wasn't being used by the women's groups as had been the original intent. And I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think that the key is to make sure that we are always being sensitive to the traditional ways of doing things, so that there's no imposition, so to speak, but that we're also upfront and really truthful about the fact that, you know, these technologies we're trying to kind of look at new models, and we need the support of the men and the husbands and the chiefs of villages to make this as you know, as transformative as possible. It's not us versus them, but there is an opportunity here, and so I think that if we ignore that, we will see that, and we have seen that a lot of times when you bring technology into a village, men start to take interest and they take over. And so we want to avoid that, and we want to be thinking about that, and that's a social question.
We do also have a question if you have an automated version of the thresher, and if so, how much would that cost?
We do not yet have an automated version of the thresher. So far it's hand operated. We dabbled with an automated version a couple years ago, and it was over $1,000, and we feel like the low-hanging fruit right now is with the hand operated version. I think we believe in choices, so that's something that we would look at in the future. We have a grinder, a multiple crop grinder that's actually in 40 countries around the world, and that is both hand operated and motorized. And you know, as farmers also have the financial capacity and can motorize, we think this is also a major opportunity.
Okay, a question that came earlier for both CTI and IITA came from Don Humpel, who would like to know, how does IITA and CTI deal with any national requirements for machinery registration or approval before distribution or sale commercially? For instance, the National Ag Technology Commission, such as exists in Malawi.
I can speak to that anyway. And IITA, I'll just say in Senegal it wasn't a requirement, and we've done a lot of the work in Senegal, you know, along the way, and so that was not an issue there, or it hasn't been thus far. In Malawi, as you say, it's a requirement. So we worked with DARS there, and also with Luana or Bunda College to prepare, you know, the release of the technologies that we've developed there. We're in the process of we've released 3 technologies, and the sheller that I showed you is in the process, I hope, of being released because it's an optimized version of what we had been working on in the past. But we know that this is the requirement in Malawi and I believe in Tanzania and Zambia, and so we think that yeah. We're not ignoring that. We think that, again, working with the National Technology Committee is strategic.
Okay, Peter, if you guys would like to unmute your mic there in Nigeria, I have some questions that would also apply to you. And the first one would be, have you guys also had to deal with mechanization boards?
Come in again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, the question again, please.
Have you all also had to deal with things such as machinery registration before distribution or sale commercially?
No, we don't do that kind of registration. But IIT has a kind of immune to some of the laws within the country, but we obey the municipal law. Like I am a registered engineer, I have my stamp, and for instance, the machine we produced of recent and we sent to Tanzania, there was a requirement of issuing certificates. Based on my professional competency, this particular certificate was issued, and the machine went across the border without any question.
Okay. One of the original questions that was not asked was, African smallholder farmers don't have access to loans and don't have enough resources for savings. So how can we facilitate their access to technologies? Now, IITA has already said that their model, or their cost point tends to be towards the service providers. How about CTI? Are you selling to individuals, or is it service providers?
I think we're still exploring the different models that work. I mean, we were the return on investment model that we've developed is mostly for the service providers for threshing, but also individual seed producers do in fact have the financial capacity and interest to purchase as individuals. So I think there's room for different models. Part of the reason for also wanting to work with buyers for the grain, such as the one I mentioned, Mamed Jabout, is so that once farmers have contracts with the buyers, they can negotiate better terms for their better loan terms. And we're looking at 14% interest on loans. So we, I think it's key to have finance partners, and we have, we also have prioritized that and are trying to develop that out as what will eventually help us to really succeed, and of course a lower price point for the technology, and a business model for farmers will really help. So yeah, I think it's really important, but I don't think it's true actually that farmers can't pay. In many cases, farmers can pay, and they will pay. They pool their money either through savings and loans groups and other group initiatives that they have. If they see value in the technology, they can pay, and I think we sometimes misunderstand that.
Victoria Salin wanted to know a little bit more about the service provider model. Either one of you could answer. She'd like to know what the charge is for the use of the thresher. Is it operated by the farmer, producer, or by a service provider? She wonders about control of quality of the grains if a third-party service provider operates the thresher.
Okay. Yeah, basically what we do is we charge we measure with kg, like 50 kg, we charge less than $2 per 50 kg for the services. And also what we do basically is we evaluate or examine the grain to check the dryness, and we have some facilities like screeners. We advise them to spread it very well, and once we are sure of the moisture content and there won't be shattered losses and every other thing considered, that's how we've been operating in fact.
Okay, and we also had a question: how many countries has the IITA thresher made it into?
Well, for now, I know of Nigeria, and we've been circulating it very well because we are in partnership with some organizations like National Center of Mechanization in Nigeria, and they are really scaling it out in Nigeria. We've partnered with other countries in scaling out other machines. For thresher in particular, I would like Engineer Kolawole to respond to that.
Yes, the IITA Thresher has gone far and wide, and as I told you, this was fabricated or designed in 1990 by Dr. Dion and Alois Kim. And this IITA Thresher has gone so wide that into Ethiopia and so many other African countries that I do not have a record of. I don't know, the man from Guinea, whether you have access to IITA Threshers across that land.
Yeah, it's in many countries, but as you say, the issue is the record. The issue is the access to record for now. But in Nigeria, is well distributed because we have trained a lot of fabricators that have taken over the production of these threshers. I think they should be in Benin Republic. Yeah. And there should be some in Ghana too. Those three countries, I know it's available for the thresher. Yes.
Okay, that leads us into our next question. Speculating the agricultural landscape 20 years from now, what level of mechanization do you guys foresee as the standard for smallholder farmers? Should development groups today be investing in incremental technology advancements or disruptive technologies?
Can we say both? I think we should say both. I mean, yes. I think that you have to have some big and some small. And I don't think it should be an either or. And so that was why I was saying earlier, there's a lot of, and depending on the country and the infrastructure, there's a lot of room for these kind of bigger, more disruptive innovations to really play a major part, whether it's cool storage and obviously transportation, and these things are really critical. But recognizing where smallholder farmers are today, I think we can do a lot and do it a lot faster by starting with where they are and bringing in these simple technologies that have been showcased today as a recognition of the reality, the current reality, and some fast wins, and again a chance to for farmers to lift themselves up, because how otherwise are they going to access these other innovations? And the other issue is ownership. I mean, they can actually afford these technologies and keep them in their community and have choice and empowerment within their community, with starting with the incremental. And I think that is also a really important part of the work.
Peter, would you guys like to comment?
Yes. The way I'm looking at it, we have this particular period in our life, we have a very active youth, and everybody seems to be going into the cities. Music can be fully mechanized, and so many other aspects of human life are fully mechanized. But in case of agriculture, I'm looking at it that fewer people in Africa will be involved in production of food as time goes on. And whether we like it or not, we are bent on transferring technology. We are bent on improving the available technology within our reach to actually go into farming and feed ourselves and then feed the world. Presently in Nigeria, I think Nigeria is talking about Nigerian rice now, and I'm very happy. Now, very soon, Nigeria have their capability of feeding the whole world. So, with the research from IITA, having an African rice, having very good grains, seeds that you can plant. After planting, you have bumper harvest. Then the machines, these small machines here and there, with our fabricators here and there and small service provider, we will soon have a very good future. And I told you about a program, CHART, which IITA is championing. It's just about that. Is to make sure Africa can feed Africa. And this will require this simple technology. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. So the available technologies anywhere in Asia, in America, that we can adopt to our own fields, we are ready. And then also use our youth to go ahead and learn how to produce this, if possible. What do you call it? Integrated engineering, scaling up available technology to actually see that we meet our requirement. We cannot continue this way, because presently now we have a lot of farmers in Africa, over 70%, and yet our bill of importation is just very high. But if everybody work together like the way I say it's dreaming now, and getting everybody involved in the value chain, I'm seeing a very big future whereby Africa will be ready to export food to other continents if possible. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I think we've just about wrapped things up. If anybody would like to stay on and continue to ask questions, you may do so. I'll keep it going until everybody's left. I want to thank the speakers today. You both gave excellent presentations, very informative, and I applaud the work you're doing in sub-Saharan Africa on mechanization. I hope that one of the goals of this webinar series is that we can bring all the players together in mechanization and try not to duplicate, but try to help each other. So there is a slide up that I think you guys can see, that if anybody else is interested in contributing to the webinar series, just to contact me, and that also that we're developing a mechanization network so that people who are working on similar projects can coordinate and collaborate better. So I thank you, all of the participants, all the attendees, for attending, and I'll leave things up, and people can continue to ask questions if they would like, but as you guys leave, after the last person leaves, I'll shut it down. Oh, okay, David Ojo also brought up when CTI was talking about the groundnut sheller, have you thought about a groundnut harvester yet? Because apparently there are issues with groundnut harvesting and that makes it difficult.
You mean like hand hoe? Yes, we have a. I didn't showcase it because this was not the topic of today's conversation. But we have a. When we went into Malawi and initial research also in Tanzania, we looked at labor constraints, and the farmers identified harvesting, stripping, and shelling as the three major constraints. So we have a lifter that has been approved by the Malawian government technology committee. We have a stripper and we have the sheller. We also have a early stage prototype for winnower, and we have this grinder that I mentioned, the multiple crop grinder, as a way. We're looking at now the whole agro-processing, food processing component as well, in terms of the kind of full cycle of also having value-added, technologies and goods as well. But yes, we have a lifter, and I'm trying to remember the efficiency of the lifter. I think it's like at least 9 times faster, at least in Malawi. It does require ridged. It requires rows for the nuts. So if it's kind of a flat planting, it doesn't work as well. But again, these are kinds of things that can be adapted at the national level, as needed.
Before anybody else drops off the webinar too, I want to mention that we will make copies of the PowerPoints available. We'll provide the contact information for the speakers, and there's also a recording of the webinar that will be posted at the Soybean Innovation Lab website, which is posted there on the screen. And if you have any other more specific questions, you can also contact me at my email address, or Courtney Tamimi at hers. But we will provide you contact information with both IITA and CTI.